So we said we're going to be reading about V'asuli Mikdash v'shachanti b'seichem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Bnei Yisrael to make a Beis HaMikdash, and Kaviyach HaKadosh Baruch Hu will live or will dwell within Bnei Yisrael. In Sefer Dvarim, it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Am Yisrael that I'm going to choose a certain city. We know that originally there was made a Mishkan, which was sort of like a portable Beis HaMikdash. For the first one was mamish portable, taken down and put up with the crushim, each one of the masos. And eventually we came to Shiloh, and the Mishkan was there for 369 years. Then Novagivan, and eventually came to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is called the city that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to live in that city, Kaviyachal. That Mokom Yivchar Hashem Elokecha Boile Shakin Shmo Yisham, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chooses a certain place that is covered, that Hashem shall live over there. So the pasuk says, "L'shichnoi tidrishu uvasa shama." You should search out the Shechina, the place where Shechina means dwelling, the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu lives, and tidrishu means to seek, to search. So the l'shichnoi tidrishu, you should be doresh, you should search the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu lives. Uvasa shama, and that's where you come and makar the karbanos and bring the meisers and so on. The Mefarshim, the Ramban, talks about why the pasuk says "L'shichnoi tidrishu v'asa shama." That there's a doresh, there's a seeking to the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu lives, and he says that the Torah specifically wants that when people come to the Beis Hamikdash, he says they're traveling from north, south, east, and west, from all over Eretz Yisrael. People are traveling to the Beis Hamikdash, and they say, "Ono derech Beis Hashem." Where is the way that we go up to the house of Hashem? Where's the way that we go up to the Beis Hamikdash? And we search out and get to the place of the Beis Hamikdash itself. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu not just want, that just like we know by the Arei Miklot, there were signs exactly how to get there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu by the Beis Hamikdash wants a little bit different, that people should go on the way and not just use Waze and get there right away, but to ask directions, how do I get to the Beis Hamikdash? And the Sifri even says more, that before they built the Beis Hamikdash, so David HaMelech wasn't sure exactly where the Beis Hamikdash is going to be. It seems like, and there was a searching involved until he got to the place of the Mokom Hamikdash that we know on the Har Habayis and built the Beis Hamikdash over there. And the Mefarshim explained, there's a Malbim and a Briskura, they explain that when someone searches for something, someone puts an effort and he tries to figure out, how do I get there? Where do I go? I made a wrong turn, so I'm going to go back. So that sort of internalizes a little bit more the appreciation for finally getting to the place of Mokom Yivchar Hashem Elokecha Shmo Yisham. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that we should search for the place and get to the Mokom of the Shechina of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, even though today the Beis Hamikdash is not standing anymore, we know that the Kedusha, we'll talk about it, the Rambam says that the Kedusha of the place of the Beis Hamikdash has been Pnei HaShechina, is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachal lives over there, dwells over there, U'Shechina Eina B'Teila. Even after the house itself is not Kayim, the Shechina still exists, unlike, let's say, a Beis HaKnesses or a Beis HaMidrash, that the building or what's going on within the walls, that's what gives it the Kedusha. And once the shul's not there, not when it's Chorev, but if it's not there at all, so there's no Kedusha to the place itself. But by the Mokom Hamikdash, even after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, the place itself has the Kedusha, because the Shechina Kaviyachal is still there, even though the house, the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, but Kaviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu still lives over there. And we're going to try to be Mekayim together a little bit today of the L'shichnoi tidrishu v'asa shama, of searching out the place of the Shechina, although, we all know Bigadol, the Yerushalayim, the Har Habayis, the Mokom Hamikdash, but we're going to try to discuss a little bit where exactly is the Mokom Hamikdash on the Har Habayis. And we'll be Mekayim a little bit the mitzvah of L'shichnoi tidrishu v'asa shama. And this has ramifications in halacha too. There's various ramifications, perhaps the most being, we're going to talk about the different machanos and the different gvulos on the Har Habayis itself. But there's ramifications, for instance, just to someone a simple thing about the kivuna tefillah. We know that we daven in Eretz Yisrael, we daven towards Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, we daven towards the Beis Hamikdash. If you go to the Kotel, you'll maybe sometimes realize that some people are davening a little bit to the left. They don't daven straight towards the Kotel. They're davening like a little bit on a slant. That's because they're trying to direct or to face the place of the Beis Hamikdash itself, where the Beis Hamikdash was within the Har Habayis, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And we're going to get into it. There's also say that anyone who's in Eretz Yisrael or in Yerushalayim, or you say in Yerushalayim, you can see a lot of interesting sights, a lot of interesting things. One of the more interesting ones is when you walk by the entrance of the Kossel, which is also the entrance going up to the Har Habayis, and it's a little bit interesting. There's a big sign from the Rabbanut that says that you're not allowed to go up. Asur lefi din Torah lechol adam likanes leshetach Har Habayis mipat kedushato. And if someone stands over there any morning, he'll see from a Yidden with hats and jackets and people which look like they're Shemit Torah mitzvahs, and walking in over there. And he right away says, "What's going on over here?" Mitzad echod, there's a big sign that it says that it's also to go. Mitzad sheni, it's mutter. I see people going, so that's interesting. And many times when you see these confusing things, the truth is a little bit of both. We're going to see that there are certain areas on the Har Habayis which it's also to go to, and there are certain areas where be karon at least. I say, often ikroni. In principle, definitely would be mutter, but the yes or no is asked the local rabbi. But in principle, so we're going to talk about these different things. We're going to see that there are different areas within the Har Habayis itself. We sometimes talk about the Har Habayis or the Mokom Hamikdash as like one big area. But the truth is that the Mishnah, in the beginning of Maseches Kelim, the Mishnah lists 10 different Kedushos of Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael Kedushim Kol HaRotzos, Habayis HaMakofos Choimo, Yerushalayim. And what's interesting is that within the Har Habayis itself, there are 8 different levels of Kedusha, one on top of the other, from the outer area of the Har Habayis, the Chela, the Snoshim, up until the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is the most holy area in the Beis Hamikdash. So there are different levels of Kedusha within the Har Habayis itself, each one with, I should say that the Kedusha, also one of the things that Kedusha has is, of course, the main thing is the Kedusha that it's miyuchad for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it also comes with that people who aren't up to it, who aren't pure enough, are mishtaleach, it's called, that they're sent out, they're not supposed to come into that area of the holiest Kedusha. And each one of these different levels of Kedusha, of these 8 different levels of Kedusha on Har Habayis, each one has its own level of impure people that should not be coming into over there. So there's different areas on the Har Habayis itself, and that's what we're going to try to see today. Sorry, just a second. Oh, it's okay. The idea of different machanos, of different areas of Kedusha starts already with Bnei Yisrael in the Midbar. We know that Bnei Yisrael in the Midbar camped in a way of circles, of machanos, 3 circles. I'm going to go a little bit quicker over here because I see that people probably know. If I'm going too quick, then ask me a question if it's not understood, and if I'm going too slow, you could also be u'meramez to go a little bit quicker. But B'gadol, Bnei Yisrael in the Midbar camped in a way of 3 circles. So there's the Machne Yisrael, or the outer circle with the 12 Shvatim, each one with its degel. Then over here we go out. Over here is the middle circle, is what's called Machane Leviyah. Machane Leviyah was the center, was the middle. And in the very center was the Mishkan itself, with the Mishkan and its Chotzer, which is called Machane Shechina. Kaviyachol, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's camp, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu lives. So again, we have Machane Shechina, Machane Leviyah, and Machane Yisrael. Here we see it just in color codes, and we're going to be using these color codes, not that it's anything special, but just as a traffic light. So you have Machane Shechina over here, Machane Leviyah around it, and in the outer circle is Machane Yisrael. Now right after, in Parshas Bamidbar, it talks about the different machanos, and then the Chumash goes on and says, Vayidab Hashem Yerushalayim Tzavez Bnei Yisrael, V'yishalchu min ha-machaneh, they should send out of the machaneh, which min ha-machaneh, out of the camp, kol tzarua, v'chol zov, v'chol tomei l'nefesh. And it goes on, v'lo yitamu es machaneh, asher ani shochim b'sirchom. So if someone reads the pasuk, it seems that there's the machaneh, and there are 3 tmeim that are supposed to be sent out of the machaneh, being mitzira, tzarua, is zav, we're going to talk about it in a second, and v'chol tomei l'nefesh, someone who's a tmei meis. Chazal tell us that it's not just all 3 tmeim being sent out of the machaneh, but rather, as we spoke before, there were 3 different machanos, so each machaneh has a different tumah which is supposed to be out of that machaneh. Chazal say that the Mitzorah is to be sent out of all three machanos. In other words, he doesn't even come into Machane Yisrael. V'chol Zav, we're going to talk in a second about what a tumah of a Zav is. He's allowed into Machane Yisrael, but he's not supposed to come into Machane Leviyah. And a Tamei L'Nefesh could be in Machane Yisrael and also in Machane Leviyah, just not in Machane Shechina. We're going to talk about all of them just in one more second again. So what are the Tmeim? So a Mitzorah is something that today we're not noig Mitzorah because you go to a Kohen and the Acharinim talk about why aren't we noig Dina Mitzorah today. But either way, we don't have Mitzorah today, so it's not really common. And then there's a tumah called Zav. Now, Zav itself is probably something like a sickness, gonorrhea, of the sort. But Chazal say that Zav is also Kollel, also includes what's called Zav v'chaverav. Any tumah hayotzei migufay, meaning a tumah that generates within one's body. There could be a tumah that someone becomes tamei from touching something. He touches a sheretz, he touches a mace, he touches something which is tamei, and sort of he also encounters the tumah, so he becomes tamei. Whereas a Zav, the Chaverav will include any tumah that comes from within a person's body. So that Zav, Zava, a Nida, a Yoledes, and a Balkari, the Gemara says, is also considered, the Gemara adds that on, that's also considered with Zav and Chaverav. So whenever we talk about the halachos of Zav, we're really including all the Tmeim of a tumah hayotzei migufay. And the last Tamei is Tamei L'Nefesh. And Tamei L'Nefesh means someone who came in contact with a mace. Either someone touched a dead person, or he was in a beis hakvaros on top of a kever, in the same oil as a mace, different various ways how a person could become a Tamei mace. So we have three Tmeim, Mitzorah, Zav, and Tamei L'Nefesh. And, this is Rashi. So it's nice, Rashi says, V'yishalchu min ha'machaneh, and Rashi explains that each one of the Tmeim is mishtaleach out of a different machna. Hatzarua mishtaleach chutz l'kulam, meaning the Mitzorah is not allowed even into any one of the three machanos. The Zav is outside Machne Yisrael, just not in the Machne Leviyah and within, Mishtaleach min hashtayim. And a Tamei L'Nefesh is muter even in Machne Leviyah, even within the middle circle, just not within the Machne Shechina. So over here again, just with our color code, because now we're talking sort of theoretical, so we're going to translate this into Yerushalayim today, but this is just the idea. So a Mitzorah is all the way outside. They say he spoke Lashon Hara maybe, and we don't want him B'chlal in the area, and he's Chutz L'Machane Yisrael. A Zav is allowed to be in Machane Yisrael, but he's not allowed to be in Machane Leviyah. And someone who goes to the mikveh and he's out of Zav, so he's just a Tamei Mace. A Tamei Mace is only Mishtaleach outside of Machane Shechina. Now, this itself, what we spoke up until now, was the Machanos in the Midbar. When Am Yisrael comes into Eretz Yisrael, so then even though they're not camping anymore, they're not living anymore in this three rings, but the idea of the Machanos, the concept of the Machanos is then transferred into Eretz Yisrael, into Yerushalayim, that the city of Yerushalayim would become Machane Yisrael. The Har Habayis would be Machane Leviyah, and what's called the Azara inside, we're going to talk about that in a second, is Machane Shechina. So we have the whole city of Yerushalayim. The city of Yerushalayim, this isn't exact, but just to get the idea, the city of Yerushalayim is considered Machane Yisrael, and so a Mitzorah wouldn't be allowed to enter to the entire Machane Yisrael. The Har Habayis is the middle Machane. The Har Habayis includes everything that's at the Beis Hamikdash on the Har Habayis, besides for the inner court itself. We know that the Beis Hamikdash was made up of the bayis, sort of like by the Mishkan, right? So there was the Heichal, it's called, with the menorah and the Shulchan, and the Mizbeach Hazav is, and around that was the Azara, which is called a Choter. Azara is just Aramaic for Choter, and it's sort of the courtyard, the inner courtyard where the Mizbeach would be, and that's mamish the innermost part of the Beis Hamikdash. And then there's all around all the Lashachos and the Zasnoshim and everything else, that's all part of Har Habayis, and that would be considered Machane Leviyah. So we have again Machane Yisrael in the whole area of Yerushalayim. Machane Leviyah would be the Har Habayis, and Machane Shechina would be the Azara itself, or the place of the Azara. So if we go back to our Tmeim, to our three Tmeim, so we said there's a Mitzorah. A Mitzorah is the most common. The Mitzorah is not allowed into the city at all. He has to be outside of the walls of Yerushalayim. Someone who's Zav or Zav Chavirov is not allowed to go into the area of the Har Habayis. Someone who is not in the status of a Zav, but he is in the status of Tmei Meis, so he's not allowed to go into the area of Machnei Shechina of the Azora itself.
Where's the Sheretz? Sheretz is which group?
Tmei Sheretz is not allowed into the Machnei Shechina. He's not one of these groups. He's also just not allowed into Machnei Shechina. But I'm talking about Tmei Nefesh because those are the three Tmeim that the Torah spoke about in this subject, in the Shiluach Machanos, and that's also usually what's Nogea to us.
Just a quick clarification. So when the Jews enter Eretz Yisrael, there's now dual Mokom Kodesh because
There's what, Kodesh? I'm sorry?
Dual Mokom Kodesh. There's the area in Yerushalayim that we're designating for what will be the base of Mikdash, and then there's the Mishkan itself that has this in Kedusha, or only when the base of Mikdash is physically built does it transfer?
I think when the Beis Hamikdash is built in Yerushalayim, that's when it gets the din of Machanei Shechina. Only when when Shlomo HaMelech actually builds the Beis Hamikdash over there, maybe you could talk when David HaMelech builds the Mizbeach, but Bigadol, when Shlomo HaMelech builds the Beis Hamikdash, that's when it gets the halacha of Machanei Shechina.
So when the Jews enter Eretz Yisrael, how is the status physically changed? That's what I was
Okay, so when Jews enter Eretz Yisrael, in the beginning Yerushalayim is not yet, I said when they enter Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim is Kodesh, but you're right, it doesn't happen mamish simultaneously, there's about 400 years in between. So Bnei Yisrael come into Eretz Yisrael, so first they're in other cities, and the Mishkan is set up in Shiloh, and Shiloh for 369 years was Hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elokech l'shaken shmo Yisham, and when people would eat korbanos and eat kodshim kalim, there are differences with B'chol Haroya, but it's in Shiloh, and then afterwards Nov and Givon, which might not have been Hamakom asher yivchar Hashem, it's just the Mizbeach, but then when they set up the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, so that's already these machanos. So this is the Rambam that sums up nicely what we said. We're going to get a lefichach meshalchim es hametzora chutz leshalosh machanos shu chutz leYerushalayim u'meshalchim zovam vezovos nividos v'yoldos chutz leshnei machanos shu chutz lahar Habayis, and etmei meis afilo hameis atzmoi mutar likanes lahar Habayis shenema v'yikach Moshe es atzmos Yosef imoi b'machanei Leviyo. That's this week's parsha, so I should say it, that the Pasuk says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when they went out of Mitzrayim, took with the bones of Yosef HaTzadik to bring them up to Eretz Yisrael. So Chazal Darshan, that it says Imo means that Moshe Rabbeinu took it with him. And throughout the whole camp in the Midbar, he had it with him. So Moshe Rabbeinu was a Levi, of course, and Moshe Rabbeinu lived in Machanei Leviah, and he had the Aron of Atzmos Yosef with him. So he's from that Chazal, it's a Tosefta, the Gemara brings it in Zvachim, the Gemara learns out that that even not only someone who came in contact with a mace is allowed to be in Machanei Leviah, but even the mace itself is allowed to be in Machanei Leviah, as Moshe Rabbeinu had the bones of Yosef with him in Machanei Leviah. Now, every tumah in the Torah, as a whole, every tumah has a way to become pure from that tumah, has a tahara, connected that tumah. Some of them we may not have today, but b'ofen ikroni, in principle in the Torah, every tumah has a way to become tahor. The way of becoming tamei from a tahor, of becoming pure from a tmei meis, is with a para aduma, that we're makriv a para aduma, not makriv, they share the para aduma on the har hazeisim, and burn it and make ashes and mix that with water and it's sort of a soap maybe, and sprinkle it on people on the third and seventh day, and that way they become pure from a tmei meis. Now today, at least as of now, we don't have para aduma, and that's why if someone is to come in contact with a mace, he doesn't really have any way to purify himself from it. I've heard there are people that are working today very on making a para aduma. There's already a few parot adumot, actual red cows, heifers, which should be be'etzem kosher for para aduma in Eretz Yisrael, and there are people which are working very hard in this, but I don't know how fast it's actually going to happen. But as of today, we don't have para aduma, and therefore if someone is to come in contact with a mace, he doesn't really have any way to purify himself from it. Now technically, a person could not become tmei meis. Is born not in a hospital, because the hospitals usually also have dead people, and then there's always a problem of oil ames. But someone's a home birth, and then they make sure not to go to places where there's mesim. Technically, there could be someone who's not tmei meis. But for the most of us, people do go to hospitals and go to levayas and go through places where there are kvarim, and therefore we assume that we are all at some point we came in contact with the mace and our tmei mace, and since we don't have any way to purify ourselves from tmei mace, therefore we're all in the status of tmei mace. And just to go back for a second, but if we're going to talk about the machanos, since we said that a tmei mace is not allowed to go into the area of machne shchina, so we're not going to be able to go into machne shchina, into the most inner part of the Beis Hamikdash and the Azara. But we'll get back to that in a second. All other tmeim besides for tmei mace have a tara, which I have today. A zav betzim needs tefillah in a mayim chayim, in a spring. All other tmeim tovel in a kosher mikveh. Once they tovel in a mikveh, so then they become pure from the tumah. And now there are no more status in the zav. So let's say you would have a nido, yoledes, or belkeri. So he's tamei, but after he goes to the mikveh, so now he's not tamei anymore. So to sum up what we said up until today, and therefore I said that we assume that we're all tmei mesim, and therefore the inside area, which would be the machne shchina, would be off limits to us, because since we're tmei mesim, we're not allowed to go into the area of machne shchina, the inner part of the Mokom Hamikdash. All other tmeim, once they toveled in a mikveh, now they're not tamei anymore. Once they're pure, so now he's not a mitzayra and he's not tamei as a tumah yotzei migufay. So now he's allowed to go also into the city of Yerushalayim, and technically he's also allowed to go into the area of Har Habayis, which is machne leviyah, because once he went to the mikveh, now he's tahor. So now he could go into the area of machne leviyah itself. So to sum it up, someone today who would go into the mikveh, so then he wouldn't be a mitzayra, so he could go into Yerushalayim, he could also go into machne leviyah, but he cannot go into the area of machne shchina. Now, this is a little bit simplified, because I said how it would be on a Minat Torah level. There's one other thing that I would add, which is a chumrah of midrabanan. There's a machlokas achonim if the chumras of the rabbanan apply even when the Beis Hamikdash is not standing, but I just want to explain what it is. And that's other areas in the Har Habayis called the Zasnoshim and the Chel. And in order to get to that, I'm just going to go a little bit of an overview of the different sections of the Har Habayis itself. So, open parentheses, it's going to be important. But this is, we have a Mishnayos called Meseches Midos, which is interesting. Most Meseches and Shas talk about the different halachos. We have Hilchas Shabbos, Hilchas Erevin, Hilchas Shchenim, Baba B'tzia, Baba Basra. Meseches Midos is really a Masechta which talks about the different areas and different sections on the Har Habayis itself, about the Beis Hamikdash and about the Lashachos and about the Azaros, which you have to understand exactly what halachos is the Mishnah is coming to tell us. They talk about this. The Rambam says maybe if someone would want to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, then he would rebuild it the way it's described in Meseches Midos. But anyhow, in Meseches Midos it says that the Har Habayis is 500 amas by 500 amas, a square of about 250 meters by 250 meters. So that would be the whole Har Habayis, the whole outside area. Within it, there's a Azara. Again, Azara is Aramaic for Chotzer, which was 187 amas by 135 amas. So just to see it over here, this we said is the city of Yerushalayim. Here we have 500 by 500 is the Machne Leviyah, the Har Habayis. And we have a rectangle of 187 by 135 amas, which is the Azara itself. Within it we see the Beis Hamikdash and the Mizbeach, so that's the Machne Shechina, that's really the most inner part in the Mokom Hamikdash. Besides for that, there was also what's called the Ezras Hanoshim, which Josephus says that it's because the women always used to come and daven at the Beis Hamikdash, not because women are only allowed into the Ezras Hanoshim, but because it says even in the Chumash that they would come and tzoyvos on the Pesach Oil Moed to daven over there, and that's why it was called the Ezras Hanoshim. Either way, there was another court which was 135 amas by 135 amas, which was situated to the east of the Azara. So if over here we have the big Azara, whenever we're going to be talking about the Azara, we're referring to the Azara itself over here, which is Machne Shechina. And then over here there's another court, Midrabana, which is a Tosefes Midrabana, but it's called Ezras Noshim. And around these two, there was what's called the Chel. The Chel is sort of a buffer zone, which would be around these two Azaras. And the chel over here is this blue, in this picture over here, it's this blue. It's 10 amas with a small wall around it called the soreg, which was 10 tvachim high. Just a sorag is like a little gate around the area, and that would be the chel. So this is really the innermost part of the Har Habayis, and it itself is built up of different levels. We see there's the chel, there's Asnoshim, and the Azara itself.
What is the status of Ezra's Nashim? Is it Azara or Har Habayis?
So in the Oraisa it's Har Habayis. Everything besides for the red in the middle would be the Har Habayis. Everything besides this is Be'etzem Machne Leviyah, only that it's Machne Shechina. That's what I'm getting to, that Midrabanon, maybe it would have a higher status than Har Habayis. Not as the Azara, but a higher status, some kind of middle status. We're going to get to that in a second. As Asnoshim, the Chayil. This is what it looks like in the model that's today in the Israel Museum. So you see the Beis Hamikdash here, and we see the Azara. It's hard to see the Mizbeach. This would be the Ezras Noshim. This is the Shar Nikanor, which is the entrance, the 15 steps, and the entrance into the Azara. And over here, sort of, you could see the Chayil, or the lower wall of the Soreg that goes around this area and the center of the Har Habayis. Now, what? Right, it's not so visible because of the picture, but I might have another picture here. This, you mean this wall over here? Right, this is the lower wall. It's not so visible in the picture, but that's what it's referring to. F-I-E-T? I'm sorry?
Which section would add by Hurdas?
That's even the more of Har Habayis. Not in these sections, but we're going to get to that in a second, which will get made even bigger. But that's 1 minute. This is the inner part of the Har Habayis. This area wasn't changed by Hurdas. We're going to get to that in a second also. We're going to get to everything. Bezat Hashem. Okay. Now the Mishnah Maseches Kelim tells us that although midoraisa min Torah, it's as I said, that there would be the Har Habayis as Machne Leviyah, and only the inside the Azara itself is Machane Shechina, and someone who's a Tmei Meis is only not allowed into the inner area of Machne Shechina, but he's allowed to the entire area of Machne Leviyah. The Rabbanon made a harchaka, a chumrah, and they added that from the chel, which we saw that blue area around the Azara and the Ezras Noshim, is mekudesh mimenu, is more mekudesh than the Har Habayis, that goyim and Tmei Meis are not allowed even into the area of the chel, which surrounds the Azara and the Ezras Noshim. So although midoraisa, the Tmei Meis is only not allowed into the Azara itself, all the way the innermost part. Midirabanon, Tmei Meis is not allowed even into the chel, into the area surrounding the Azara and the Ezras Noshim. It's interesting to note that everyone always talks about Tmei Meis not going into the chel, but the Mishnah also says that goyim are not allowed to go past the chel. And as a matter of fact, it was found about 130 years ago in Yerushalayim, stones that Josephus says that on the walls of the chel they were like markers or stones that had an inscription that said that no Ishzar, no Goy, no Nochri is allowed past this point. And this is a stone that has an inscription in Greek, and to say that that Goyim are not allowed into that past that point. There are 2 such stones. One is in Istanbul in Turkey because it was found when the Ottomans were in charge and they took it out there. And there's a piece of one such stone that's today in the Israel Museum. But it's interesting that they found mamish parts of it was found in secondary use. It wasn't found on the Har Habayis, it was found near the Har Habayis, but it connects to the Mishnah that we're talking about. So to sum up what I said one more time, is Zav Anida V'Yoledzim Balkeri, which is all the Tmei Mesim are not allowed onto the Har Habayis. Once someone goes to the mikveh, and he's already not a Tomei, so he's already allowed onto the Har Habayis, onto the area of Machne Leviyah. So Min HaTorah, he wouldn't be allowed to the Azara itself, which is the most inner part. And Midrabanon, he's not allowed within the Chel and inward. The rest of the Har Habayis would be permitted for a Tmei Meis to go, as we said up until now. Now, whatever I said until now is muskam. In other words, no one argues about this. This is clear halacha. The questions come a little bit further in. The question arises We said that there is an area on the Har Habayis which is called the Azara, which is the most inner part, which is where the Beis Hamikdash was, and that's really the Machne Shechina. And that area we're not allowed to go Minat Torah, because since we're Tmei, so we're not allowed to go to that area, which is about 5% today of the Har Habayis, but that area we can't go on to the Har Habayis. Now the question is, where is the Azara located on the Har Habayis today? If I don't know where the Azara is located within the Har Habayis today, then someone can't go anywhere on Har Habayis. Because let's say he starts going over here on the southeastern side. He wants to just go a couple of steps in. But maybe this is where the Azara is. And if the Azara is in that area, so then he can't go to over there. So until I know where the Azara is on the Har Habayis, I can't go anywhere on Har Habayis. Truth is that it's not only where, if I don't really have to know where exactly, really be enough to know just where the Azara is not on Har Habayis. Say, I don't know exactly if it's over here or over here, exactly where the Azara is, but I can tell you that over here, the southern side of Har Habayis is for sure the Azara is not in that area. So then, even if I don't know exactly where the Azara is, I would be allowed to go to this area over here, because I would know that I'm outside of the Azara in the area of the Shetach of Har Habayis. So what we're going to try to figure out, as we said, the Shechna Tiddush of Asa Shama, we're going to try to figure out a little bit on the Har Habayis today. Can we know where was the Azara, or at least where it was not? Can we try to locate the Azara on the Har Habayis today?
Do we know that that's Har Habayis?
So, okay, so we know that we're in Eretz Yisrael. And no, it's a good question. I'm going to speak, it's not so simple. But we know that we're in Eretz Yisrael. We assume that where Yerushalayim is. And the area of the Har Habayis, we know for, going on where the Har Habayis is today. It's not somewhere near Shar Yafo. So the exact demarcation happens to be that we know, but in other words, it doesn't really make so much of a difference, because we're going to try to figure out where the Azara is, and then even if it is exactly Har Habayis or it's over the Har Habayis, we won't know where, let's say I can't tell you exactly where the line of the Har Habayis is. Maybe there's an area which is even off the Har Habayis, or this area is on the Har Habayis. It doesn't really make so much of a difference as long as I can know where the Azara is.
I can't go to the Har Habayis, I don't go to the mikvah.
Okay, so if someone would not go to the mikvah, so he wouldn't be allowed to go even to a place which is a suffix of being on the Har Habayis. Correct. And that's why most people assume, let's say, that the walls of the coast, I'm going to get to that in a second, of the walls of Har Habayis. Some will tell you maybe the Har Habayis was further out, and that's why they don't even go close to the coastal without going to the mikveh. Correct. Now, but the reason why I said it is because it's interesting. We're going to get to that in 1 second. And now we're going to try to figure out where the Mokom Hamikdash is on Har Habayis based on a few approaches. One is what we're going to call, we'll get to each one of these soon, the Mesorah, sort of a tradition that went from generation to generation, and from comparing the information that we have from Mishnayos Maseches Midos to the Har Habayis today. We're going to perhaps be able to figure out from that where the different areas are within the Har Habayis, and some other things that we're going to try to figure out based on that, where the Mokom Hamikdash, where the Azara is within the Har Habayis today. One of the key things that we're going to be talking about, I'm getting to it in a minute. One of the key things that we're going to be talking about is an area on the Har Habayis which is called the Even HaShasiyah, and that's why I'm just going to introduce it. The Even HaShasiyah is a stone that was in the Beis Hamikdash. It was in the center of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and it's not Lashon, it's not in drinking, but rather it's a Lashon of Tashtis, as a foundation stone. The foundation stone in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash had the Aron with the Kruvim on top of it. It was at the center of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. In the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, or whenever the Mishnignas Aron, once the Aron was not around anymore, so then the Kohen Gadol would go and be makbid the Ketores on Yom Kippurim, on Yom Kippur, on the stone itself, on the Even HaShasiyah. And that was the center of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, if I would be able to locate where the Even HaShasiyah was in the Har Habayis, I would then be able to mark around that, based on the knowledge that we have from Maseches Midos, where if I would know where the Even HaShasiyah is, I know that the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 by 20 amas, and then I know how to make the Beis Hamikdash, and the Heichal, and the Azara, and so on and so forth. Based on what I have on Maseches Midos, I would be able to set it on. But I would have to find the place of the Even HaShasiyah on the Har Habayis. Now, I'm going to go for 1 second to see what the Har Habayis looks like today, and then we're going to start out our search in the time that we have left to try to find the Mokom Hamikdash within the Har Habayis. So this is looking at the Har Habayis from the northeast. This is the eastern wall of the Har Habayis, and this is the northern wall. The Kosel would be over here. It's hard for me to see. Here's Porat Yosef, here's Yeshivat HaKotel. So right over here is the Kosel Plaza, which is the western wall of the Har Habayis. The Har Habayis has a long wall called the western wall of the Har Habayis. There's the southern wall of the Har Habayis, the eastern wall of the Har Habayis, and the northern wall of the Har Habayis. Many of these walls, at least parts of the three walls of the western wall, southern wall, and eastern wall, are actually survived from the time of the Beis Hamikdash. The northern wall is fully new, but it's built on top of the same place as it was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. And this is the way we know Har Habayis today. I'm not sure if this picture makes it better or worse, but over here you see the Kosel Plaza. This is the ramp that goes up. This is the Machkama. This is the southern wall excavations and the Shari Chuld area. This is where we went with Nisan, right? To this area over here. Oh, so then you guys will know. Okay. And this is the southern wall, the long western wall. The Kosel Maravi is one part of it. And this whole area is the Har Habayis. What's interesting is that I'm getting to figure out who asked, the Har Habayis that we see today is a lot larger than the 500 amas by 500 amas that the Mishnah tells us about. The Mishnah tells us that Har Habayis was 500 amas by 500 amas. And today we see the Har Habayis, it's almost double that. It's about 500 meters from north to south, and about 300 meters from east to west. So it's a lot larger than the 500 amas by 500 amas. And it is explained that is because within the times of Bayesheni, about 100 years before Churban Bayesheni, there was a king named Hordus, or Herod the Great, who added big retaining walls around the slopes of the Har Habayis, and filled up the slopes over here with earth, or really with arches and earth on top of that, and that way he sort of created a bigger platform and extended the slopes of Har Habayis to be part of the mountain also. You guys are with me? Just I have some. Oh, whatever. We'll get to that in a minute. Now that's the Har Habayis, the way it looks today. Now Har Habayis is really today is set up of two main parts. There is the lower area of the Har Habayis, which on the southern side of it is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And over here you can see a picture from before, this is from the 30s, from 1930, and you can see that it's sort of like empty area, the lower area, and then there's the center area, which is called the platform, or the Ramah Mugbat, which is the higher area of Har Habayis. You can see that this area has stones on it, sort of pavement, and there's a big buildings on it called the Dome of the Rock and Kippat HaShalshelet. We'll get to these buildings in a second. Beseda. Now, we said we're going to try to find on the Har Habayis, try to locate on the Har Habayis where exactly is the Mokom Hamikdash on the Har Habayis, and we're setting out for our journey. So the first thing I said was Mesoros. Mesoros really means what was given over generation to generation, just like you said. How do we know that we're in Eretz Yisrael? How do we know that we're in Yerushalayim? There's a letter from Moshe Chagiz, who was a Rav in Yerushalayim, called Tzvas Emes. The Yishuv in Yerushalayim always used to be nitmach, always used to be supported from the Jewish communities in the diaspora. And they one time sent a letter to Moshe Chagiz saying that we're stopping to give money. Because you guys say that you're living in Yerushalayim, you're in Eretz Yisrael. Who said? Who said it's Eretz Yisrael? Who said it's Yerushalayim? And Moshe Chagiz actually has a letter of like 10 different seifim to answer back, to explain how he knows that he's in Yerushalayim. And it's very funny, like the way he says it, because he says, oh, well, we could still see on the east, we see Har Hazesim, and we see the Mayon HaShiloach on the south. It's a little bit like Uriah also needs Uriah, who says that it's really Har Hazesim. But it really wasn't so sure. But the main thing it is that Yidden always had a connection to Yerushalayim. And even after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, for hundreds of years, there were Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, living at first also in different areas in Yehuda, and after the Bar Kokhba revolt, more up north in the Galil and the Golan, there was many Yidden living in those areas, and they used to come to Yerushalayim, or at least to visit. There was also a Yishuv in Yerushalayim throughout most of the generations, not always. Not a big Yishuv, but there was what was called the Kahala Kadisha of Yerushalayim. And after the Muslim conquest of Eretz Yisrael, so then already by Umar Khattab, 70 families moved from Tveria to Yerushalayim, and from then there was constantly a Yiddish Yishuv in Yerushalayim. But I would mention the letter of the Shlah. The Shlah lived about 350 years ago. It's 400 years ago in Eretz Yisrael. He came from Prague to Eretz Yisrael. And he lived in Yerushalayim at that time. He lived in Yerushalayim until there was a fallout with Ibn Faruq, and he moved up to Tveria, and he's buried in Tveria. And he was living in Yerushalayim, and that time Tzfas was the main city of Eretz Yisrael. And one of his Chaverim from Prague sent a letter to the Shlah, and he tells him, I heard that you're living in Yerushalayim, and I don't understand. How do you live in Yerushalayim? Don't you know that you're not allowed to live in Yerushalayim? So he says, what? You're not allowed to live in Yerushalayim? He says, yeah. He says, in Yerushalayim there's a place of the Mokom Hamikdash, of Machane Shechina. And we all know that because we're Tmei Mesim, one is not allowed to walk into the area of the Azara. And who knows within Yerushalayim where the Azara is. Maybe it's here, maybe it's there. And he even tells him that that's why the Talmidim of the Arizal didn't live in Yerushalayim, and they went to Tzfas because they were afraid to live in Yerushalayim, because there's the area of the Har Habayis within, of the Mokom Hamikdash within Yerushalayim. And the Shlah answers back a long letter, very interesting, and I'm just going to read it. Mashetoma dirasi b'Yerushalayim HaKodesh, machmas kedushas Mokom Hamikdash, and it's b'kedusha, even af b'chorbana, and we don't know. So he says, where am I? Hine basi al divrei emes b'amita shel Torah lo yediach od dvar emes. And he tells him that, Ki me'olam lo yo safek b'mkom beis hamikdash. Just like there is no safek that there was a beis hamikdash and there's going to be a beis hamikdash, there is no confusion of where the beis hamikdash is. Ki huzeh v'lo nis'alem min ha'ayin afilu rega echad. Even though Yerushalayim was going over, there was constantly wars and Yerushalayim was changing who was in charge, but me'olam lo nifseka ha'kabbalah v'ha'yadiyah, to say where the makom of the beis hamikdash was. Now, this Shlah is referring to a certain area in Yerushalayim, which is, you can find being said over for many generations, that the Beis HaMikdash or the Mokom Hamikdash is mamish in that area. And that is, I said, in the center of the Har Habayis, there is a big building called the Dome of the Rock. The building itself was built about 1,330 years ago. It was built by Muslims. And this is the building. It's a big building, and it's the reason why it's called the Dome of the Rock is because it's built around a big rock. And that rock, according to the Jewish tradition and according to the Muslim tradition, but it's a tradition that's being said at least from the times of the Go'onim onward, is that the rock, that the Dome of the Rock was built around, is the Mokom of the Even HaShasiyah, which was the center of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There's even Mekoros that say, talk about when the Mokom of the Beis HaMikdash was built. This is from the Gniza, from the Cairo Gniza, a few of these Mekoros. There's Mekoros that talk about that, after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, so the Romans destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and the Byzantines, the Christians afterwards, who were in Yerushalayim for many years, about 600 years, the Roman Christians ruled Yerushalayim. And they kept the Mokom of the Beis HaMikdash Dafka to be destroyed, because they saw in that Kaviyachal that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry at Bnei Yisrael and sent them out, and they wanted to see the Churban in front of their eyes. About 600 years after the Churban, when the Muslims come to Eretz Yisrael, so the Yidden first met them when they were in Tveria. The Yidden at that time lived in Tveria, already after the Talmud Yerushalayim, about 100 years later, but the Yidden at that time were in Tveria, and they met the Muslims. And they saw that they were better to the Yidden, and they said, listen, you guys now are going and conquering the whole world, but you don't know anything about the mountains over here, about the ways, about what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. We live here. We'll help you. There were actually, there's numbers which are given, like 20,000 Yidden helped them. The Yidden helped them in conquering Eretz Yisrael, and for that, they gave the Jews a few things. First of all, that they let 70 Jewish families move from Tveria to Yerushalayim, as I mentioned, and that they built on the place of the Mokom Hamikdash, where the Beis Hamikdash was, instead of it being destroyed, they built it up as a nice place, out of the Mokom of the Beis Hamikdash itself. So this is one of the Mekoros chronicle that was found in the Gniza, and it talks about Omer ibn Khattab, the Muslim Khalif who came and conquered Yerushalayim.
So it's better to have another house of worship that we can't go in and that has all these halachic issues than it staying
So actually, when they built it, it wasn't the place of worship itself. Even today, the mosque itself is at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Dome of the Rock is a makom. It's like a shrine, and it's considered Mokom Hamikdash. And we'll see in a second that the Midrashim of the time talk positively about the building up the place of the Beis Hamikdash. Instead of it being in ruins, it's a knife. There are also Mekoros, I don't think I brought it over here, that in the beginning Jews had certain jobs. They used to light the Neiros on top of over there. They definitely used to go in even to there. That already gets into the Ravid, and that maybe you were allowed even into the place of the Beis Hamikdash itself, which I didn't mention. And but there are Mekoros of Yidden going even over there too.
Is it possible the Jews tricked them? Didn't tell the accurate place?
It's possible, but why would in other words?
They don't want Goyim to be
Desecrating the land even more.
I hear, but it wasn't assumed at the time that they tricked them. In other words, what was going on from then and onward was that it was the correct place, but it would be possible, I guess. Where was I? 1 second, just. So we asked the Jews about where the cellar, the Even Shtia, and someone showed it to him, and he built the Mokom Hamikdash on top of it. And from then there's many Mekoros. This is a letter that was sent from the Rabbanim of Yerushalayim to collect money, and they say the story about how when they took over the land from the Christians, from Yat Edom, Yerushalayim, so people from the Yidden came and they showed them the Mokom Hamikdash, and they built the Dome of the Rock on top of it. This is not only a Jewish story, it's also said over by the Muslims. It's Al-Tabari who brings a story of people going on to the Har Habayis and showing where the Mokom Hamikdash was, an Armenian bishop and others. And this is just interesting because the Midrashim of the time talk about it in a positive way. It says about the 15 things that Bnei Yishmael are going to do in Eretz Yisrael, ba'acharis hayomim. And one of the things is, v'yigdru pirtos chomis beis hamikdash, v'yivnu binyan beheichal. The Nestor the B'Shimon Bar Yochai is sort of a medrash talking that the B'Shimon Bar Yochai is in a Amira, and he sees all the tzaras that are going to come on Am Yisrael, and he starts crying, and the Malach tells him, don't worry, that after the whole Golos, which at that time was considered to be, the whole Byzantine, which they made terrible xeris against the Yidden, so HaMelech Hasheni Sheyamid MiYishmael, which is Umay Muchatab, the second Caliph, is going to be a Oyev Yisrael, v'yigdor pirtoseim, or pirtos ha'heichal, or b'nei lo yishamish techavoya, al even shasiyah. So this Mesorah that the Dome of the Rock is built over the Even HaShasiyah was later said over by anyone who passed by Eretz Yisrael, anyone who lived in Yerushalayim. They all said that the Dome of the Rock is built over the makom of the Even HaShasiyah, and it was famously used by the Radvaz. And the Radvaz was actually asked a question about where on Har Habayit one can go to work, to pray. He was talking. So he starts off his tshuva by saying that Hadavar Boro Shetachas Akipa under the dome Sham Even HaShasiyah B'li Safik Hanit Kro Etzlam Al Sachra, and in Safik Even Hazoy Shetachas Akipa Even HaShasiyah Shalom Oren Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. And this is later Mitzutat. This is brought down by many poskim, by the Bach when he talks about Hilchas Kriya, by the Chidah, the Pasach Shulchan. The Chafetz Chaim actually talks about being makrif korbanos. And the halacha is that you have to have the sha'arim of the Beis Hamikdash have to be open, Pesach Shar Eichel, and he talks about if it's open, now that there's the Dome of the Rock built on top, if the doors of the Dome of the Rock are open. So Imam has a whole arichas and assumes as a davar pasha that the Dome of the Rock is built over the place of the Beis Hamikdash itself. And so if we started off saying where would the Azara be within the Beis Hamikdash, so it's one thing is that the Mesorah, this as the sheet of the Radvaz, but as we saw the Radvaz was only 500 years ago. He already quotes this as a davar yadua, as a known thing. But it starts off almost 800 years before the Radvaz. We already have Mekoros quoting that that's the place of the Beis Hamikdash itself. But that's all, what's said. Like you said, it's a Mesorah. That's what people say over. Is there a way that we could find out where is the place on the Beis Hamikdash, on the Har Habayis, without being seimich, without relying on what is just said over? And I think that there is a way. And that's the topography of the Har Habayis, which I think this is the most amazing thing about it. And this is mamish like Ermes me Eretz Titzmach. The truth comes up from the earth itself. So first of all, what is topography? Am I repeating? If Nisanel said that you guys will know, so then tell me. So the Har Habayis, besides for being the holiest place on earth, is also a har. It's also a mountain. The issue with building a Beis Hamikdash on a mountain is that you build your Beis Hamikdash up on top, And when you have more and more people coming, so sort of they start like sloping down the mountain. The guy down here feels like he's in the parking lot. And he doesn't feel like he's really part of what's going on up on top in the Har Habayis itself. So about 100 years before the Churban, I said, Hudas builds these huge retaining walls around the Har Habayis and fills up this area with landfill, basically, or arches and landfill on top, and makes the whole area one big platform that we see today as Har Habayis. But if we were to take away that big thing that was built by Herod, we would try to find the rock counter, the rocks itself of the mountain. Where is the Har Habayis itself? So there is about 150 years ago, there was what was called the PEF, the Palestine Exploration Fund, which was based in England. It was started, well, at least with the money of Queen Victoria, and British explorers came to Eretz Yisrael, and they researched, they really wanted to dig a lot on the Har Habayis. They weren't so matzliach to dig that much on the Har Habayis, and they ended up being, that's how they found Warren's Shaft and Ir David, and the area by the southern excavations. They sort of went around and around Har Habayis, but on the Har Habayis, they weren't able to actually excavate and dig, but they did do a lot of research. And on the Har Habayis, there was about 40 underground structures. Some were water cisterns, some were date back from the time of the Beis Hamikdash, underground structures. And at this area, they were able to see where the rock actually starts, because you see the first few feet, the first 2-3 feet is earth, and where the rock of the Har Habayis is, you could see where it's landfill. And they made what's called a topographical map of the Har Habayis. So the topographical map of these lines, each line is really 10 feet. So we have, this is the summit of Har Habayis, and then every line going out is 10 feet below. So if you have, let's say over here, all the lines very close together, that means that it's a much steeper part of the mountain, because just moving just a little bit, you're already going down 50 feet. Whereas over here, it's a very, the slope is very matun, it's very gradual, thank you. And over here it's relatively straight, no slope at all. So this gives us sort of the different levels of the Har Habayis itself. This is a painting of one of the huge Boros Mayim, which is down there. Now, what's interesting is that, what happened there? That because Har Habayis was built on a mountain, just like today when you build on a mountain, it's not just a flat area. You don't fill it up all the way till the top. And that's why they make the Har Habayis in different levels. So you would have, let's say, the Azara, the Ezras Noshim, say, on one level, and then a person would go up 15 steps, and he would be on another level, the level of the Azara, of the Eretz Yisrael. He would have to go up a couple of steps, which really he's going up on the mountain, onto the Ezras Kohanim, all the way up to the place of the Heichal itself. This is just to show how, from the Har Habayis up to the Ezras Noshim, why am I pointing there? The Har Habayis up to the Ezras Noshim is 12 steps. The Mishnah says that every step is a half amma, so that would mean that it's 6 ammas going up, another 7.5 ammas of the 15 steps, and so up until the Heichal itself. Now, taking these different levels, someone takes a cut of these different levels of what the Azoros would be on, and then he would transfer or just take them over to the mountain of the Har Habayis today and try to see where do we have these different levels that fit with the levels that were said in the Mishnayos. And sure enough, if you start from the place of the Dome of the Rock, then you would see that going down to this area over here to the east, which would be the Azara, you're going down about 3 meters, which is about 6 ammas, going down to the level of the Azara. And then over here you can even see today there's still steps going down to the level of the Ezras Noshim. And all the levels that we know from the Maseches Midos fit exactly perfectly on the different levels of the mountain today. Whereas if we go in any other place in the Har Habayis, say if we would go, let's say, to the north, so in the north it's much flatter over here, and there's no real descent over here in this area. So if the Beis Hamikdash would be in the north, then why were there steps going up to the Beis Hamikdash? Over here, even though it looks flat over here, but the mountain itself is really very steep, and you would need a lot more steps than what's said in the Mishnah. So the different levels that the Mishnayos tells us fits perfectly onto the levels of the Har Habayis today, starting with the Dome of the Rock being the Mokom of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Mokom of the Beis Hamikdash, which is interesting that we also spoke about the Mesorah of just the tradition that people were saying over, and it fits perfectly to the different levels on the Har Habayis today. This is a little bit more complicated. Maybe afterwards I'll get into that, but I don't want to take so much time. Also, based on the topography, you can prove the levels are on the Har Habayis today. I'm just going to skip to this one. This is sort of like a cut of proportionate what the levels on the Har Habayis would be. See how it fits. Again, I said that if we try to fit it on the south, so you would see that here would be the Azara. So first of all, within the Azara itself, there's a descent. And then look in the Ezras Noshim, how much lower you would be going. You would need a lot more steps going up. If we would put it on the north, then again, over here you see how it's much flat. There would be no steps going down from the Heichel to the place of the Azara, no steps going down from the Azara to the area of the Ezras Noshim. Only over here do we see that from the Heichel to the area of the Azara, we're going down about 10 feet. And then over here by the Ezras Noshim, from the Azara out to the Ezras Noshim, again we're going down the way it's described in Meseches Midos.
Are there any other topographical markers that were given in the Torah, given in the Gemara to do this outside of just the steps themselves? 'Cause it seems like
there are, but that's what I skipped. I'm going to get to that soon. I want to finish this because I want to finish on time, and then afterwards I'll stay a little bit longer. Another few things, just like what it says about the Beis Hamikdash, there are different areas where we could find some clues of where the Beis Hamikdash is. For instance, the Pasuk and Josephus tell us that the Beis Hamikdash was on the top of the mountain. Al Rosh Har was on the summit of the Har Habayis, and as we saw in the topographical map, that the Dome of the Rock or the Sachra would be on the top of the Har Habayis itself. Another thing that it talks about that the wall, or really the eastern wall of the Azara, meaning between the Ezras Noshim and the Eretz Yisrael, it says Kama Yogu Neviim Rishonim, to make it that it should be exactly to due east, because the sun comes up every day on the east, but sometimes a little bit in the northeast to the southeast. And they wanted that every day when the sun comes up, it should shine right into the door of the Heichel. So if it would be just a little bit east, but a few degrees off, so then in the summer or in the winter, you wouldn't have the sun shining straight in. So they wanted to make that the walls of the eastern wall of the Azara should be due east. Now, if we look, the blue is the lines of the cardinal directions. So this is the real east. And look at the wall of the Har Habayis, and you'll see that it's not built, or the southern wall of the Har Habayis is not exactly south or western wall, and that is because it was built based on also for the topography. And when you build it, so sometimes you have to make it the way the shetach is. But if we look over here, this wall, again, this is Dome of the Rock, this is the upper platform, and according to the calculations, it would come out that with these steps this is mamish the eastern wall of the Azara. And this wall is built on top of an older wall, which is exactly to due east. It faces due east. In other words, it runs north-south. So there's all these other clues on the Har Habayis itself. There's many, many different clues which could tell us about where the Mokom Hamikdash is on the Har Habayis.
How old are the trees in the Har Habayis?
Fairly new, as you see in the picture which we saw before. In the 30s, there would come out no trees on the Har Habayis. And most of them are from after 1948. Maybe more of them even newer. But this is another thing within the Sachra itself, in the rock, in the Dome of the Rock, which is a big rock. There's sort of like a little cave that goes down. This is a drawing of the cave. I don't have a picture of it. And this is going down to the cave, and it's interesting because sort of mamish under the rock there's like a cave going down. And we know that the Aron was hidden. There's different shitas in the Gemara where the Aron is. Maybe it went to Bavel, but the Rambam, and that's assumed that the Aron was actually taken and hidden in a cave, and it was hidden, the Rambam says, in where its place was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Because the Rambam holds, and the Yerushalayim says, that when the Aron is Shalom Komo, then the Kedusha is bottled, and you're allowed to be Makrav Babomos. And because he wants to say that today the Kedusha is still there, and there's an Isser Bamos, you're not allowed to be Makrav Karbanos in other places outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So he wants to create that, that's why he holds that the Aron was hidden Bimkomo in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And he says that Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the Beis Hamikdash, Be'esha Bana Shlomo Habayis, V'yodash Sofa Chorev, so he made a place to hide the Aron, the Mato B'matmonios, Amukois V'akalkalois, deep and twisted tunnel beneath the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and there is that tunnel over there under with this opening called Bor HaRuchot. The Arabs have a Masorah that all the Neshamos are down over here, and there is another cave that continues down over here, but it was never fully explored. There was someone who tried to explore in 1911, Parker, and they said but it was never really fully opened up and explored. So these are all different things. Now, just to wrap it up, I'm going to finish in 2 minutes. Over here, where am I? 1 second. Okay. Over here, this is on the Har Habayis. If we see over here, this is again these blue as the walls of the Har Habayis today. This is the Koisel area, the Koisel Plaza. We're talking about the place of the Dome of the Rock, which is the Mokom, which we said of the Beis Hamikdash itself. So if we would put the Azara, it would be in this area up on top. So this would be the area of Machne Shechina, and this is the area where even on a Deraisa level, even on a Minatora level, us which were in the status of Tmei Mason wouldn't be allowed to go into this area up over here. The rest of our Habayis, Ba'ofen Ikroni, on a, in principle, we would be allowed to go on a Torah level. On a Derabanan level, we said that the Rabbanan were expanded that Kedusha to include not only the Ezas Noshim and the Chel that goes around it, but even the Ezas Noshim and the Chel, look how big it is within the Har Habayis, within the walls of the Har Habayis today. This is probably the walls of the old Har Habayis, the 500 Amas, but as I said, that you can't put exactly where it is, but it doesn't really make so much of a difference, because since we said that someone who goes to the mikveh could go to this area also, and without going to mikveh, people wouldn't go up to this area either, al tzarchoka, which that we could get into. So it doesn't really make a difference exactly where the line of Har Habayis. What makes more of a difference is where is the area of the Azoros, which would be this area over here. Boom. Now, the people who go to Har Habayis today, I'll just show where they go. They go up over here. This is the ramp that goes up, and they walk over here along the southern side, out to the east. On the east, they go across the wall, walk over here, and people stop and daven, and then continue out over here on the north and the west. Most people don't even go B'chlal onto the upper platform. I should say that after 1967, Har Habayis was open again, and many Eden started going again to Har Habayis. I spoke to people in the 60s, in the 70s, and even the 80s. From people didn't know, and people went up onto Har Habayis, and there was no knowledge of the different gvulos, of the different things of Har Habayis, and people went all over, even into the Dome of the Rock. And the Rabbanim then saw that this was happening, and they said, we have to put a stop to it. If we're just going to say, start teaching everyone about the different gvulos and the different halachos, it's quite complicated, and someone's going to see from me walking over here, and he's not going to know that he's staying just outside of this line. Someone won't chop, and he's going to walk over here also inside the Azara. And that's why they put out a kol korah that people shouldn't go to the Har Habayis at all. And maybe most Rabbanim still go with that today. The others claim or say that today it's very established where people walk on Har Habayis, and it's much more the knowledge of the different gvulos of Har Habayis is much more commonly known, and there's exact routes and things. The police know it better than the people, and that's why people today, you will see from people going on to Har Habayis. So if we go back to our first question, some people say you're not allowed to go to Har Habayis B'chlal, and some people say, oh, of course you could go. So usually, as usual, the truth is somewhere in between, that there are areas on Har Habayis which Taka al-Pi halacha one is not allowed to go at all. There are areas on Har Habayis where at least in principle some would be able to go, and exactly how to do, that's why you guys are lucky that you have a Rav, so you have to speak to. Okay, so that's the koach.